Hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to Real Talk. And it's really good to be with you this evening or this afternoon or this morning, depending on when you're tuning into this. Laura, do you want to just explain a little bit about what is Real Talk for those who may be joining us for the first time today?
Yeah, so it's just a chance for us to share with you, just to be real and honest with you, and for you to do the same with us too in the comments. So it's just a real place where we want to be vulnerable, we want to share real life stuff so that we can help each other. I think that when we don't talk about stuff, it stays in shadows, doesn't it? And then we don't realize that we're all the same. And the stuff that happens to us is just life. It's just normal, isn't it? So the more we talk about it, the more normal we make it.
Definitely. So be encouraged to interact. We can see the various platforms coming in with various comments and stuff. So it'd be great to maybe share some of those comments. And we would love to hear about topics that you want us to cover. We did have someone who got in touch with us about a subject that they wanted us to share, which we're going to be sharing about tonight. So do send us your comments. Do let us know your suggestions. So Laura, what we're going to be looking at this evening?
Yeah, so we had a request to talk about parenting. So first of all, we want to say that we're not by no means experts. It's a learn on the job kind of thing, isn't it? So we're still parents, and we're always going to be parents. So we're learning all the time. So tonight we want to do something a little bit different, and we want to ask the older generations on here, especially our parents and Paul and I now, and those older generations that are the next generation above us and the one above that too. We want to ask you to help us out in the comments. So we want you to help us to answer questions and to give helpful advice to people. And then maybe some of the younger generations that are new parents or young parents or parents of teenagers, you can ask any question and we'll try and answer it. So we want to try and be a bit more interactive today, a bit more into the comments than we normally try to be. And we'll try and read out some of the comments that come up and talk around those things. And then we've got a few points that we just want to discuss that a couple of people have asked us to cover. So I want to say that being a parent is probably one of the most rewarding but hardest jobs that I've ever done. I don't know about you.
Definitely, it's not easy. I'm sure all the other parents on here can testify. And let me just say this, because I know we're talking about natural parenting today in this session, but this does relate to spiritual parenting as well. So even for those of you who may be thinking, I don't have any children, this is not relevant to me. Well, the reality is that one day you might have physical children, but also this does relate to having spiritual children. So we can be like spiritual mums and dads, nans and granddads to people. I think this is an area that is really needed in our world. We all need input. We all need support. We all need that, encouragement, those healthy, positive things that parents should be. So this is going to be relevant wherever you're at in your journey of life. This is going to be relevant stuff to you.
And also, you don't have to have physical children. You could have nieces or nephews. You could have godchildren. You could have friends whose kids you look after. You could be a carer. There's so many areas, aren't there? So
school teachers as well.
Anything like that. So I think this can be applied to every area. So please do help us out in the comments. Please ask any question that you want to ask, and we'll just try and look across at the comments and be really interactive. So one of the things that this particular person that asked us to cover this topic asked about is discipline. So we've been discussing this over the last couple of days, and we've just been talking about it, haven't we? How we discipline our own children, how we've come to that point, why we don't do certain things and why we do certain things. So I think it's everybody's different. Everybody's going to discipline in a different way. All children are different. They will all respond to different ways of being spoken to and disciplined. So we've never physically smacked our children. We discussed it, and that was something that we never wanted to do. We personally didn't think that it taught them anything. And probably for us, we felt like it taught them the opposite, really. So there are other ways that we discipline our children. And I think discipline really is about correction and teaching them something. So I think if if we're just shouting at them and we're just telling them off, then the next time they go and do that certain thing, they're not going to learn what it is, why they shouldn't do that. And I think kids are always testing the boundaries when they're small. And then we're just about to hit the teenage years, so it all changes and it's all a little bit different. But I think the most important thing to do is that we need to be teaching them right from wrong. So we need to be giving them loving correction, and that sometimes there needs to be a consequence, doesn't it, for their actions. So we would do things like we would, not that we would take things away, but that we would well, I guess we would actually. I guess we would take things away. So we would take privileges away instead, because those kind of things have to be earned. We have, when they're small, we've done things like time out. So for those of you with small kids, we have done time out, and we've explained to them, this is why you're sitting on the step. This is what's going to happen. This is how long you're going to be here for. And that always worked for us, because when they were small, it taught them that they didn't want to be there again, so they didn't do that thing again. And I think we've been pretty blessed with our kids. They're very obedient. They most of the time,
wow.
They're
some of the time
they're very good, really. They mostly do what we ask them to, and I think that's because over the years, obviously we've made mistakes over the years, but over the years we've tried to be consistent, and we've tried to always sit them down. And we were talking earlier about as well, showing them from our example. So when we make a mistake, we try to sit them down and we try to explain to them, and I try and point out my mistake. So if there's been an occasion where me and Daniel may have had a disagreement and we've done it in front of them, I try and sit them down and I tell them. There was one particular time where I behaved in a way that I shouldn't have in front of them towards Daniel, and then I sat them down, didn't I? I talked to them and I said, that's not the way I should have spoken to Dad. It's not right to do that, because we have to remember that we're the example that they're seeing every day, and ultimately I'm their example of how they're seeing how they should treat their husband when they get one. I know that's veering off into a different subject, but do you have anything that you want to say about discipline?
Yeah, I think what's important, there's a scripture in the Bible that says that God disciplines those he loves. And so actually, when we think about discipline, it's a sign that we actually love, that we actually care, that we want to help educate people. But it's really important. I think sometimes when we hear that word discipline, we can think quite harsh or angry, or, if we've had a negative experience in the past, sometimes we can associate it with some wrong things. So what's really important is that we respond, we don't react. And so it's really important that we're not lashing out in anger, that we're not being unrestrained, that we're not being violent or abusive in any way. In a sense, we want that child to feel loved, affirmed, and safe. But we also want to clarify, certain boundaries, and that, if you do certain things, there will be consequences. And I remember, my dad, he would often, sit down and explain, this will be the consequence. You have a choice. So there's that element of freedom. You have a choice, but this will be the consequence if you choose to do these things. And so I think it's really important that we communicate well with our children, and we try and communicate in a way that they get, that they understand, but they also feel really loved. And affirmed as well. And
obviously when they're small, when people have got very small children, they're not going to quite understand that. But I think that's the thing about being consistent and being keep doing those things, and then they will get there eventually. They'll see what you're doing, and if you're consistent, you do it over and over again. So let's just read some comments. So people just saying that parenting is a really hard job. I saw a really good one. So I saw Paul Cowdrey said boundaries is very important. My dad put, how do you get your child to tidy their room? And I think he might be hinting at me when I was a teenager.
So what did you do, Paul? I'd be really interested to know yours and Julie's tactics for getting Laura to tidy her room.
Let's hide that. Let's get rid of that. Someone put, I tell him tidy your room, otherwise I'll lock you in the cupboard.
Hopefully that is a joke. we sometimes joke about the movie, don't we? Is it Matilda? You know, that bit where this is about putting you in the chokey, but obviously is as a joke.
So someone said teenagers, that's the hardest of times. But actually, I was speaking to someone about this the other day, and how that a lot of people on Instagram will post negative things about having teenagers, especially girl teenagers. But I'm finding that it is testing, but that as they get a little bit older, they like the same stuff as you, so you can go and hang out with them, and I think you build a even closer bond than you had with them when they were small, because they're becoming small adults, aren't they? So they're kind of like the same things as you, so it is fun. Your mum's responding there, she's saying we used to take pocket money away, but then they could earn it back. I think that's always, like, kids, you know, love that reward of financial rewards, don't they? Like to be able to buy things. So yeah, that's something that's really, really helpful. Privileges like iPad time, time watching TV, playing the PlayStation or Xbox or Switch or whatever it is, the device that they enjoy playing with. So there's different ways, isn't there, that you can kind of, but I like that whole idea about being able to earn it back. And so there is there's a carrot, there's an incentive there as well. But all children are different, and so it is important. And obviously, we're aware that some people watching this broadcast, maybe your child might have some, you know, learning difficulties, some challenges, and so that kind of does add some extra layers of complexity. And that's why it's really helpful to study, you know, this area of parenting. It's such an important area of our lives that it's helpful to read books, look at blogs, you know, watch some videos on YouTube that will help give you ideas and strategies that you can try out to find out what really works. Because I think Mark put a comment there about Aoife. I'm not sure it would work with Aoife. She likes sitting on steps. So yeah, if it's something that they don't mind, actually, that's not much of a disciplinary action. It's not something that they're actually going to be that bothered about. So even if you say, right, you go to your room right now, and they might actually really enjoy being in their room. So like, okay then. So it's got to be something that, in a sense, that there's an element of, I really wanted that. Yeah, someone generally has put, leave the room if you get angry, then come back and speak to them calmly, and I think that's very good advice. Never discipline when you're cross or you're angry. Always go take time out, even if it means explaining it to them. I'm going to get the battery. The battery's going on my computer. So never discipline them when you're angry. Always make sure that you take time out. That's excellent advice. Let's have a look what else people are saying. So Wendy Potter's put, teach them to do their own laundry early on. Natural consequences come about when they are out of clothes to wear. So we've just recently taught Talia to do her own laundry, and she doesn't always do it, but she knows how to do it. So it's very good. And I think it teaches them real life stuff, that there are harder things to do and there are jobs for them to do. So we would love to hear your other comments as well. Let's just scroll up. So Dale Marshall's put, don't go there, Paul. Mouldy plates and cups in the room come to mind, and rubbish up to the ceiling. My brother was the one who left mouldy cups in his bedroom, and he used to shove his lunchbox food that he didn't want under the bed, so my mum didn't find it. So there was one year that my parents found like 20 yogurts under the bed, which is disgusting. I think he got in a lot of trouble for that. So Bethany's put, my sister loves reading in her room on her own, so taking her with the TV or iPad and sending her to her room makes no difference to her. Yes, Sophie would, if we sent Sophie to her room, she would not care. She'd just be off in her own little world up there. So Dan Wiz has put, our kids have their own laundry baskets, so once I wash and dry it, it's their responsibility. Yeah, we do that too. So sometimes it sits on the floor for a while, but it's very good to teach them responsibility. So my dad says, Daniel never had a problem being sent to his room. Laura, however, didn't like being sent there. I didn't. It's probably because he likes being on his own and I don't. So we also discussed in the week about how important it is to take time out for ourselves, because being a parent can be all-consuming and it can take a lot of our time up. And there are two sides to this. So if you're a married couple that are parents, then you need to take time out like separately, but you also need to take time out together. And then if you're a single parent, it's really important that you take time out and you lean on other people. So if there's a certain person that will look after your kids and your kids feel comfortable with them, it's really important that you take time out. And I remember right at the beginning of having kids, people really stressed to us that, oh, keep your date night, have a date night. And we were just like, yeah, whatever. We didn't really pay attention to it. And then 5 years down the line, we were like, oh my gosh, we haven't had a date night. We haven't really spent a lot of time together, because when they're babies, they take up a lot of your time. And I do think it's very important. I think that even though we were told that advice and we kind of didn't pay attention to it, it's very good advice that we would give to new parents. Always make sure that you have time for your partner. And then if you're a single parent, always make sure that you can find that person that can help you. If you don't have parents around, maybe a friend could look after your children, and go out and do something that you like, something that fills your cup up, something maybe you did before you had kids. Because I think, especially mothers, we can lose our identity when we become a mum, and it kind of becomes all about our children, and we don't do things for ourselves anymore. And then I think sometimes, I know I've experienced this in the past, you tend to get a little bit of resentment because you're doing everything for everybody else and you're not doing anything for anybody else. So while you share a little bit on that, I'll just scroll through the comments.
Yeah, it's really important to get that time together as husband and wife. And or Laura said, if you're a single parent, getting time out to replenish, to have fun, to do things that you enjoy. And so, that's where family are really helpful. Also, having good friends, obviously trustworthy people. I mean, that goes without saying, really. But you want to have people, and if there is maybe a lack of, that's an area that you could make a real point of prayer to say, Lord God, bring some people into my life that will be trustworthy, that will really be able to help. I know sometimes people have godparents as well, and so that can play a supportive role. Uncles, aunties, grandparents, and obviously aware that some people will have more support than others. Being part of the church community, obviously that could really help as well. But yeah, it's so important that we don't allow our children just to kind of rule our world and just become all consuming, where it almost can become feel like a bit of a black hole, or sometimes where we can kind of almost shift into kind of, dare I say it, idolatry, where the child, becomes everything to us. And, in the situation, with parents, it's important to remember the child is not the king or the queen. Mum and dad, in a sense, assume that role. And, it's important that the children aren't the ones that are kind of ruling the roost, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think as well, guilt. Sometimes we can struggle with guilt that when we go out and we do things for ourselves, because we've been a parent for so long, or even if you're a new parent with a baby, that, oh, I can't do anything for myself because like the children need me, or they need me to do this, or they do a good job as well when they're a bit older of, not in a bad way on purpose, but making you feel guilty because they want you to stay with them. But you do need to have time to yourself. You need to, if you haven't got friends, then make that a prayer point, find some friends. I've even seen people have babysitter circles. So the only people that they knew were other parents. So all the parents got together and they went around in turns babysitting each other's kids. They would have a sleepover and the other parents would go away for the night. So that's a good idea if you don't have your own parents around, or people that don't have kids that can look after your kids as well. So also we wanted to talk about mentors. So it's very important. And I think often people think of this with their work life, if they're in leadership, but as parents, we need mentors too. We need those generations that have been there before us and they've been there, done it, and they've got the t-shirt and they know what they're talking about as well. So when we think about people that we look up to as parents, we think about people that have brought their kids up really well, but they've made mistakes too along the way, because no one's ever going to be perfect. But I think it's very important to have those people, isn't it, that we can look up to.
I think role models are really important, and you know, sometimes it might be role models that you actually know, and obviously that's great because you can kind of go a bit deeper in observing, asking questions, seeking advice, seeking that support where that's possible. But also, I would say, you know, you can have role models that maybe are a little bit distant, where you don't have that personal contact. So I know, like, I think it's Rob Parsons, isn't it, from Care for the Family, do some amazing resources on parenting. I know that Alpha have their own kind of version of the parenting course. And so there's sometimes helpful things where it's a kind of, yeah, mentoring, coaching, but kind of not directly, it's kind of indirectly. And so, yeah, don't worry if you don't have people around you. You know, there's always ways that you can learn, that you can grow, and see how other people do it.
Yeah.
And recognize that no one's perfect. There's no such thing as the perfect parent apart from God. God's our perfect parent. But, you know, every parent has their struggles. And if they tell you that they don't, they're lying. Because I know we have moments where we feel like we're pulling our hair out with our children. We have moments of frustration. We have moments where, you know, we feel really in control and doing really well. And there's other times where we sometimes get a bit tired and frustrated and we cave in, and we might let them go on the iPad, you know, maybe a little bit longer than we would normally say. Is that me? Well, I'm pretty sure you've given in a few times. Sometimes it might be like, you know, they've been begging to have some sweets or whatever, and, you know, you're like, but it's not treat night, and but they just catch you at that wrong moment. You know, particularly for me, I think when I'm working and I'm in doing something, or sometimes, you know, if I'm in a broadcast or something like that, and, you know, one of the children will come and ask me for something. It's like, you know what you're doing, don't you? You just want me. You're looking for that quick answer so that you know that it'll clear you away, and you'll get what you want. So we're all a work in progress, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think as well, there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame admitting our I don't like to say failures, but the things that we're struggling with parenting, and there's no shame in finding someone or finding a course. And I think often we think we do courses for work, but I mean, parenting for especially for a stay-at-home parent as well is like a 24/7 job. So it's something that, and you kind of get thrown in with not very much training, really, don't you? You have a baby, and you kind of think, oh, like I did. I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to bring this person up to turn out to be like a good human being? But you just learn along the way, and you learn from other people, you learn from your mistakes, ask lots of questions. And I think when we try and do it on our own, that's when we're going to get into trouble, because we need to lean on each other, and we do really need community when we're parenting.
Definitely. There's a few other comments here. I know Wendy Potter has put about my mum sent her a great prayer to pray over her daughter. So yeah, prayer is so important, and even praying for your children in advance. I pray for my girls for their future husbands, and I think that's something that I know my parents did for me and my brother, and it's something that's really important. So laying that foundation of prayer, praying for ourselves, praying for our children is really important. Dan Warboys has put, your mum and dad, Paul and Julie, have always been available to me for good advice on some things. I know Paul Cowdrey's also had a lot of input down in your life as well, and Len Cowdrey, I know, also had an impact in your family's life. So that's great. Wendy Potter's also saying, I'm giving my resignation to my part-time job because I feel that my long working hours are distracting me from time with my 17-year-old. I'm praying God give me wisdom in parenting her as she launches into adulthood. I think that's a really good thing. This has certainly been a really powerful evaluation time. And sometimes we can be very dominated with work. And I know that's something that I have battled with. I think I'm better than I was at. But that is something that we just have to watch, that, you know, we remember what are our true priorities in life, and where we need to make those shifts and change. You know, it's important to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so someone's part, Genevieve was part, I used to feel guilty after my night shifts and giving, but boundaries is most important. Yeah, but it is hard when you're tired. It is much easier to give in. Mark's put, who takes credit for Talia's cooking skills? I definitely think Daniel taught her.
Definitely not.
She's there are some things she's better than me at now. Definitely, she's very, very good cook. But no, Daniel can boil an egg, can't you?
It's really important. There's other things that I teach.
You're very good.
Teach and model for the children. And I think that's really important, isn't it? That we encourage our children. We should, as parents, I think we should be, certainly two of the biggest cheerleaders in their lives. That we're really, encouraging them. And I think as well, what's really important in those foundational years is speaking their true identity over them. So it's something, one of the things when I'm brushing Sophie's teeth, and because when she does it on her own, she tends to skim and doesn't do it so well. So she's still at that young age where we're still brushing her teeth. Talia brushes her own teeth, you'll be glad to know. But I'll hold her hand and I just tell her about how she's, beautiful. I tell her that she's intelligent, that she's bright, that she's generous, that she's kind. I just speak words of life over her. And I just look into her eyes and I just tell her those things as I'm brushing her teeth, which is, not the most fun of jobs, but has to be done. And so I just think, well, okay, this is an opportunity for me to really speak over her those words of life so that she starts to know the truth that will set her free. She starts to see herself the way that God sees her. And that's something that you can do that's really, really powerful. But of course, if you haven't got young children, you can still speak words of life over your spiritual children, encourage, affirm them. All of us have people in our lives that we can, point to that made a significant difference in our life because they believed in us, they affirmed us, they encouraged us. Yeah. Even when perhaps we didn't believe in ourselves, even when we perhaps didn't feel, very encouraged. And so we can do that. And that's something that I want to encourage you, do it more and more, with those around you.
I think that as well, when we're talking about people we can turn to, one of the best people who've given me really good advice is Lindsay Mann, who doesn't have any kids of his own, but he has watched people bring up children, hasn't he, all his life. And he's I think he was trained in childcare in some way or another, wasn't he? But he's given us some of the best advice and when we've turned to him in earlier years. And he doesn't have his own kids, but so I think it's not always that we need to turn to people who've got children, had experience with like physical children, because he's been around lots of kids, been around lots of teenagers as well. And my mum actually put up here that that's what grandparents are for. They're for support. So, your parents and my parents have been a big support to us over the years, haven't they? Definitely.
We've got a few other comments here. Paul Cowdery saying, about anoint your child with oil every night as you pray over them. Yeah, it's something that's really, really powerful. Bethany saying, although I don't have children, this talk's been interesting to listen to and to hear the advice given. So thank you for that. Encouraging to hear that, those comments as well. I think another thing I wanted to mention, just as we're coming into close, is about the importance of having good, healthy boundaries in place with your children, but not being overly strict and giving that room that sometimes you've got to have a little bit of flexibility. And I think that's really important, that we also give our children room to make mistakes, because that we've got to remember that we were children once and we certainly made many mistakes when we were younger. And so as they get older, in a sense, that's where we should be giving a little bit more freedoms, which obviously we need wisdom about in how we do that. But giving your children room to make their own choices, and we can advise, but then there comes that point where they've got to make up their mind and learn from the consequences. That's something that's really important as well. Yeah. Laura, any final comments from you?
No, there was a good one. So Genevieve put, my parents, brothers, and I speak life and blessings over all our kids, something that my parents instilled in us.
Brilliant. Definitely. Great words of advice. Well, we hope that you have found this helpful this evening, and we will be back next week for, I believe it's the leadership table. So looking forward to being with you again. And please do let us know your comments, your thoughts. It's been great to see some of these comments coming through here. And if you've got any suggestions for us that you would like to see us discuss at this Real Talk program, then we'd love to be able to answer some more of your questions. So God bless you guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you same time, same place next week. God bless.